Now I'm here at Queensborough Community College with the president of Queensborough Community College, Miss Christine Mangino. Now, I of course want to call her Madam President, but she insists on being called Christine. So that's what we're going to go with for this interview. So she became president of Queensborough Community College in the middle of 2020, where universities not just in the US but also around the globe were being rocked by the coronavirus. And her work was able to bring Queensborough Community College's enrollment down from the lows of 9,000 all the way up to over 12,000 students being enrolled in its undergraduate program today. So, I mean, I'm so inspired by Christine's approach to. I prepared my intro.
I understand. No, I got it.
I'm so inspired by Christine's approach to taking the university out of the rut that it was stuck in the middle of 2020, in the middle of the coronavirus, and letting it bounce back to the status that it was in before the pandemic. So once again, I'm very excited to be here, and I mean, I can't wait to interview Christine. So actually, just like Christine, my family owes a lot to the City University of New York system, of which Queensborough Community College is a part, actually. My dad earned his 5 bachelor's degrees and 1 master's degree at several different CUNY colleges. My mom is currently doing her master's degree in early childhood education. I think that's what you did a degree in as well at CUNY colleges. Right now, she's doing it at the City College of New York after, well, doing her associate degree over at Bronx Community College and a bachelor's degree at Lehman College. My brother graduated from the City College of New York with a degree in physics, and I myself have taken many supplementary courses at several City University of New York colleges and universities, including Hunter College, Brooklyn College, City Tech, City College itself. So I've been everywhere, and my family has been everywhere in the CUNY system, and we've all had lots to owe to the CUNY system. So Queensborough Community College is, of course, one part and one of the biggest and most important parts of the CUNY system, actually, which is why I'm so excited to be here with Christine today. Hi everyone, my name is Sabrina Iceberry. Right.
So we are very excited to have you. Like I said, I'm very impressed by your background and your questions, and I appreciate you saying that we're one of the best within CUNY. I'm very competitive.
Yeah, of course. I mean, Queensborough Community College isn't just one of the biggest and best, it's also one of the largest by student enrollment. I mean, 12,400, 12,500 people is a very big number. So, and I mean, that's actually 4 times the average size of a community college in New York. So, I mean, all I want to say is congratulations, first of all, for making it this far.
Thank you.
So, my first question would be, I mean, given that you're the first one in your family to go to college, how did that influence your current approach to presidency here at Queensborough Community College, where many people who struggle with gaining access to education elsewhere are able to obtain education here?
So I think a couple of ways. I had not much guidance, right, going in or even knowing where to apply to. So I applied to NYU and I applied to Nassau Community College, and NYU said thanks, but no thanks, come back in a couple of years. And I'm glad I ended up at Nassau Community College because I don't know how I would have even paid for NYU because it didn't even occur to me, right, that the finances involved. I never really saw an advisor, right? I didn't try to find out anything. I just went to school, did my classes, left, and went to work, and it all just worked out, right? But it was at a community college that I realized that I enjoyed learning. I spent my high school years using my intelligence to figure out how not to go to class and still pass. When I got to the college classes, I was like, oh, wait, I'm actually kind of good at this. And I saw one of the faculty members in my class teaching one day, and I looked at her and I'm like, you know what? That's what I want to do eventually, right? So I changed my major once I left Nassau Community College and went to Hofstra. and majored in education. And again, no advisement, walked in to register for classes, and they said, you can't major in education. You have to also major in a subject area. And without thinking, I just like circled English, right? Where I really could have used some advisement to understand what the options were, what I could have done, and get more involved in school. I think part of a lot of people benefit from going away to college and having that community, right? And making friends that you have for life. That doesn't necessarily happen when you're a commuter student. So I've worked hard to make sure that our students know to come to us, ask us questions. We know stuff about college and can answer, right? And help make sure that they don't mess it up. An example is when I was at Nassau Community College, I knew after the first year I was going to change my major. I should have changed it there, but I never did. So I have an associate's degree in hotel restaurant management. None of those credits transferred when I went to Hofstra, so I ended up graduating with a bachelor's degree with 157 credits that I did not need to pay for all of that, right? So if an advisor would have told me to change my major earlier.
It's great to hear all of that. I mean, that success story, I'm sure, is going to inspire many people, not only everywhere in the US, but also at your own college. I'm sure not that many people even here know about your background story. So, I mean, the second thing I wanted to ask is, just the biggest thing I wanted to ask first is, what's the tuition here, like per semester or per credit hour, if you do it that way, here at Queensborough?
So per year, I could tell you it's $4,800, right? So it would be $2,400 a semester. Most of our students get full financial aid, so that it's mostly covered. Almost all of our students graduate without debt, right? So even if they're going on to a bachelor's degree, or they could have gotten into a senior college, our tuition's cheaper. So it really does pay to go to a community college first, whether you need to do it to build up your academics or you want to do it to save money. Or if you're already away at school, right, and you're coming home for the summer, take a class with us during the summer at a much lower price, and you can transfer that class back to your school.
Now, here's a little secret I'm going to tell you. NYU is $30,000 a semester, which works out to $60,000 per year. That's more than 10, I think almost 15 times the yearly tuition over here. The only reason I'm going there is because I'm on a scholarship. So, I mean, this is really helping for not just people who want to save money, but underrepresented student groups who don't have the money to actually go to bigger, better colleges and universities. So how have you and your specific policies that you've implemented helped underrepresented student groups here at Queensborough Community College?
Sure. So we know that the two reasons our students stop out of school are for finances and for mental health reasons. So we looked at the finances, and it turned out that 85% of our students who owed us a tuition balance between $500 and $1,000 dropped out of school and never came back. It's not that much money, right? So like I keep telling any donor that I run into, like any one of us would take out $500 to keep a student in college, let them graduate and change their lives. So we now created the Promise Scholarship so that if students do have an outstanding balance, we can help them pay for it. And then when they're meeting with our financial aid office, also making sure that they have a plan on how to pay for college going forward, and making sure that they've completed the FAFSA and done all of that paperwork. So now we know that 85% of our students who got the scholarship register even the following semester. So we've totally reversed, right, those statistics. So that's one way to help students stay in college. And now we're trying to figure out, with mental health, how do we keep connecting them? How do we take the stigma out of going to counseling? We have a program that is called Persistence Plus. That it's a company that uses behavioral science to text students, to give them nudges to do the right things that they need to do, and they are really focused on reminding students about counseling and normalizing the fact that so many people nowadays have these really high levels of stress and anxiety, and that there are ways to work through that.
Oh, wow. So she actually answered another question that I had planned in one. Knocking out two birds with one stone, I guess. So, I mean, yeah, I think that the fact that you're there with not just all of these low tuitions, but also these active programs and scholarships to help students who don't even have enough money to pay the meager tuition to, I mean, go through college themselves and graduate and change their lives. I mean, for the people who can't even pay for community college, getting the degree is one of the most important things they're going to do.
Yep.
Because if they don't have enough money, even $1,000 or $2,000 or $5,000 to pay for the tuition, that means that without a college degree, their life is probably going to go into some pretty dark places, which I think means that you've saved, I mean, hundreds of lives here alone at Queensborough Community College. So once again, I think that all of the students here, especially the ones that have been indebted and saved by your Promise Scholarship or by any of the other programs that you've set up to help those who are struggling with their socio-emotional health, I think they really all owe so much to you.
Well, and I think to everybody on campus, right, because we all are focused on how to make sure that every student that enters our door, right, makes it to the finish line. Because when they got to us, right, as you know, it's not easy to apply to college and fill out all the paperwork and all the financial aid papers that need to happen and find the advisor and register and pay for books and get to class that first day. They all came wanting a degree. So if they don't get a degree, we have to look internally at us to figure out what barriers did we put in place to stop students from that happening. And I think everybody on campus is focused on that.
Yeah, so I mean, the next question I want to ask is, you have a very large background in early childhood education, but as you can see, not many people here are early children. So how has your teaching approach changed from then all the way to now? Now that you're dealing with people who are adults or young adults just coming into their life.
So I don't think it's changed, right? And I used to joke, because I used to teach little kids, right? And then I slowly worked my way up to college, that they just get taller, right? Like, it's still learning is learning, right? And teaching is teaching. I think what's really helped me is having the faculty appreciate the fact that I have a background in pedagogy, right? Because I get what they're trying to do. And just reminding everybody that, most faculty have a doctorate in their subject area and have not necessarily ever taken a class on teaching. So just reminding people that I have a whole lot of credits between my bachelor's degree and master's degree, specifically in teaching. There's a skill to it, right? There's a knowledge base, and that people need to feel comfortable to say, you know what, I'm struggling in my class. How can you help me? And we have a Center for Teaching and Learning to help people, but we have to let faculty feel vulnerable and comfortable enough to say, I need help so I can figure out how to do this, right? Because it's a skill set.
Yeah, so I mean, I think that one of the most important things when it comes to community college and being the president of a college is individually helping students. And so, I mean, what have been some success stories from Queensborough Community College where you or your faculty or your financial aid office have individually helped the student go from struggling, not just financially, but also possibly academically, to graduating with a degree?
The work that we've been doing has made an impact overall. So we look at our data disaggregated by gender and ethnicity, right, to see where do we need to put more focus. And we knew that we had to focus more on our Hispanic and Black males because they were not succeeding at the same level. So what are we doing wrong, right? And what could we do to support that? Over the last 3 years, we've increased the retention for our Black male students by almost 17% and for our Hispanic students by almost 13%. So overall, those are hundreds of students, right? That's lives are being changed because we as a community have created a culture of belonging and inclusion and providing the supports that they need without them necessarily having to ask for them.
He's knocking out my questions too fast.
Sorry.
No, it's fine, totally. So, I mean, going on with the topic of helping underrepresented or underperforming student groups, I mean, there's a very big stereotype in math specifically, that men are better than women. And in general, there's generally a divide between men and women where men are doing better in most universities. So, what have you or your faculty done to address that?
So we're struggling in math all over the place, right? And you're going to meet with our math faculty soon, right? So we really are looking at our low success courses to figure out how do we have to change the sequencing of courses? Do we have to change the order of the curriculum within the class? What are the pedagogical strategies that we need to use, right, for students to be more effective? I think to answer your question, two things. One is, as a country, right, we've looked to change that, right? Looking at the Regents tests, right? Men used to score better than women, and we've reversed that trend that women were then scoring better than men. I have always told students, right, and even when I was teaching future teachers, really important to tell the future teachers this. People seem to feel it's okay in the United States to say, I'm not good at math. And I tell people, like, would anybody ever admit that I'm not good at reading? Like, nobody would ever say that, right? But it seems to be okay to say that about math, right? So we have to change that. It's not that you're not good at it. It's that you haven't put the time in or haven't been taught it the way that you need to teach it, right? Elementary school teachers never really get a strong education in how to teach math specifically, right? I took one class, it was a couple of, right, 15 weeks of an hour a week or whatever. It's not really helpful. And teachers teaching elementary school, many of them are still afraid of math because they don't understand the concepts behind it, right? They could tell you how to do it, right, but they can't explain the background to it. We need to change it as a system, right, as a country, that our elementary school teachers are trained in math if they're teaching math, right? Because that's so important, because without that foundation, you're never going to get there. And then we know that people don't necessarily learn from us just talking to them, right? Like, it's not, right? Faculty probably were really successful in school, and that's why they wanted to become faculty members, right? So they are auditory and visual learners. But most community college students are not, right? They need to be involved, right? They were not necessarily successful in high school, right? In elementary school, which is why they're starting at a community college. So we need to teach them the way they need to learn, which is hands-on, right? Getting involved and really understanding at their core the basic foundations, right, of a subject. I think faculty are really concerned about getting through a textbook, right, and getting through the curriculum, right? So I joke around, like, I used to, when I was teaching, and all of a sudden, the class period's about to end, I'll start talking really fast so I could say I got it out. And then I would joke with the students, like, I know that was completely useless, right? Because it's not that you learned it. So we have to really slow down our curriculum to make sure that people understand the foundation strong enough so that they can then build on that.
We need to address that issue more deeply. And it's a very deep-rooted issue that comes with the curriculum of all pedagogy classes. So, I mean, I think that what you're doing right now here at Queensborough Community College is really addressing that in a way that a lot of other faculty and presidents don't, because they don't realize that more emphasis needs to be put on teaching and learning math.
Yeah. When I was in 6th grade, I was good at math. And my teacher had like this box of cards that you would go in and just take a card, right, and do the math on it, and then you put it back and stuff. And that was her way to keep people busy if you finished the classwork in advance. So I was getting through it pretty quick. And then I didn't know how to do one of the problems. And I'm asking her, she had no idea. She told me, look at the answer and try to figure it out, because she couldn't explain it to me. Like, that's not helpful, right?
Yeah. I mean, I think that's generally also because of the issue that
she wasn't trained in math.
Yeah. In early childhood levels, one teacher is usually forced to teach every single subject to a kid, even though in high school and beyond, it's one teacher for every single different subject. So I think, not many early childhood teachers want to learn math, and not many people with a math degree, lots of them with a math degree perceive going into early childhood education as a waste of time when they can get higher paying jobs in a high school or as faculty in a university or working at some hedge fund or something else. So I think that's a very deep-rooted issue with the way that the early childhood education system works. But I'm very glad that at least here at the college level, you're addressing it in a way that almost nobody else is.
And I think also, right, like people that are really good in math, right, and want to teach math don't want to teach math at that very basic level in elementary school too, right? So it's
exactly. So one bonus question that I want to ask you is, what do you perceive as the hardest time for you in the past 4.5 years of your presidency?
Every time you think you get through a challenge is a new one, right? I think the very beginning, I came in and we were still on Zoom, right? So I did not meet anybody on campus in person for like 6 months. So I had to, and we have 1,000 employees, so I had to build trust with people, right, over Zoom and figuring out different ways to do that so they got to know who I was and that everybody had access to see me. Because the other thing is, like, when you're on campus, people see you doing stuff, right? If everybody's in their house doing their own thing and they don't see me doing anything, right, then the perception is, well, what is she doing? Why do we need a president, right? So really making sure that I was involved with everybody. And then became the enrollment and our budget challenges, right? So I've spent 4.5 years telling people no, right? We can't buy that. We can't rehire people, right? We have to wait until we get into a better place with our budget, and we're slowly getting there. But every day there's challenges, right? And I think it's also about focusing on, again, how do we help students be successful? And we can never take our eye off that ball while we're dealing with everything. Hoping to do what eventually?
Eventually, I hope to not just become a professor, but help, professors around the world teach math in a way that's understandable and digestible for the millions of students who are currently struggling with it, and as well, the issues that we discussed in our interview are issues that I hope to rectify someday by campaigning for a different system of education, not just in early childhood, but for early childhood teachers.
So why is that your passion? Because obviously you have a photogenic memory, right?
Not really.
No, I have to say, I can never remember what I'm supposed to. I have to read my lines in my script because I get up there and I can't think beyond the words that are coming out of my mouth, right? So you had it all set and very impressive. So you don't struggle in school.
Not really.
Right? So why is your passion about helping other people learn?
I think it's generally because I struggle a little bit with other subjects. So when I was in high school and I was required to take all of the other general courses, I did struggle with studying for those, especially foreign language. And so I thought, these must be the struggles that people with math, that people are facing with math. And so even though I was finding it easy, I want to bring that level of understanding to people everywhere so that eventually, the fact that people who are math geniuses wouldn't be called like math geniuses or like above the rest of us, but instead like people who are normal. I hope to normalize being good at math instead of having it be like a rarity, the same way people are good at history or good at English or good at drawing. So I think that math is a very beautiful subject, and the fact that people aren't inclined to learn it is not a product of how uninteresting it is. It's a product of the way our education system teaches it is uninteresting.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so that's the main reason why I wanted to change it.
Yeah. So how frustrated have you been in your 12 years sitting in class with a math teacher who couldn't keep up with you or was telling you the wrong information?
That's a big part of why I skipped grades, actually. I'm not sure how much longer I would have been able to take it if I was, in 7th
No, I
grade.
understand.
Yeah. I went to a fairly good elementary school. It's actually called Milton Fane, or Public School 7. You've probably seen it before since it's in the middle of the Bronx. And actually, my teachers there were okay, but I felt like the way they taught math wasn't satisfactory either. And my third grade teacher was a very cool guy. He was very nice, even though we were online for coronavirus. He still cared about his students a lot. But the way he taught math, or rather the way the worksheets taught math, because he was just kind of reading off them, he was more a computer scientist, not a mathematician. So the way that he taught math was very boring to me. And because I knew so much more math than what he was actually teaching in class, it felt like there were so many better things that I could be doing right now. And sometimes I just turned my camera off.
Time.
Sometimes I just turned my camera off and did those things that I thought were better. And when I moved to a new school in fourth grade, in the middle of the suburbs, I mean, the conditions and budget improved a lot, but personally, I felt like the math curriculum in specific didn't improve that much. And so, I mean, that's how I slowly got more and more frustrated. And my eighth grade teacher in Algebra 1, by that time I already knew calculus, but she was a very caring teacher, but she didn't really know that much about Algebra 1 either. And so when it came to asking something deeper than the regular material, she would ask people to look it up or try to derive it herself, which often didn't do well.
My 12th grade, my 6th grade teacher, right?
Yeah.
The same thing.
And
figure it out.
The conditions do improve when you get into high school. You have teachers who are actually qualified, at least with a bachelor's degree, to be teaching what they're teaching. But by that time, lots of people have already completely lost their passion for math or physics or STEM subject in general, which I think is the main problem. We need, as you said, more qualified teachers earlier in the system.
Yeah, no, definitely. So my daughter had the opposite problem as you did. She would sit in school and not be able to retain any information and felt like she was a failure. But she would come home from school and I would then reteach her everything she had learned, right, to study for the test using active learning, right, getting her hands and her body involved in the process and stuff. And she always did well. But it took her years to overcome the feeling of failure, right? And that school wasn't for her, that she couldn't learn. And my mantra was constantly, it's like, you could learn and you're smart. Your teachers don't know how to teach you the way that you need to learn.
See, that's the very tricky thing about early childhood education that differentiates it from, teaching older kids, even kids after fifth grade. Feelings of failure and feelings that you're not good enough stick and last a lot longer and make a lot bigger of an impression on how a person does in the future, while of course also early children are a lot more temperamental and it's easier to make them angry. It's harder to get them to learn something if they are not of the right learning style, and generally it's harder for them to retain, which means that early childhood education isn't very hard when it comes to the material, but when it comes to the methods of teaching, it's really heavy. While in late childhood or in college, a lot of people have simply started putting up with professor just reading off of slides or reading off of the textbook because it works well enough for older kids, even though I still think that's totally not good.
Totally not true. Yeah. Right. But what we do is weed out the people, right, who can handle it and are still successful, and those that can't end up leaving, right? Because the other thing, and I meant to answer this in your math question, is that we give ourselves plenty of time to learn if it's a hobby, right? Like if we're going to learn an instrument, we know that it's going to take us a couple of years to be really good at it. Right? I give the example for our students all the time. When my son first learned how to surf, right? It took him 6 months before him and his friend could just stand up on the board. And then it took another 6 months before they could actually ride a wave. And still, it would be like 50% of the waves. If we're learning math or anything like that, right, we're really quick to say when first we look at it, like, I can't do it, I'm not good at this, and we shut the book, right? Like, learning's hard for most of us, not you. And it takes time, but we don't give ourselves the same time that we would if it was something else that we know is going to take a lot.
Yeah, and the most beautiful thing about math is that at the core, it rises from basic logical deduction. Is this true or is this false? And I mean, from that, and well, counting, of course, you can build up all of the fundamentals of math, but often a teacher will not tell you what x is. By the way, if people still don't have an idea of what a x is, a variable is just a name that you give a number that you don't know about yet. Like if you have it's like kind of a mask for a number to hide under. And just because two different things have two different numbers have the same mask that they're wearing doesn't mean that they're the same thing. So, and of course, in higher level math and physics, you often want to use different variables or different masks for the same thing. But an algebra teacher will not tell you that. An algebra teacher will tell you you have to divide and subtract until you get a number on one side and the letter on the other, and now the letter is the same thing as the number. And then people will get confused and say, so x is the same thing as 4, and x is the same thing as 2. Does that mean 2 is the same thing as 4? Which really frustrates me because that's using basic logical deduction, which is the whole point of math, but it uses it to get a wrong conclusion because the statement that you worked off of was taught in the wrong way in the first place. So I think that showing people the roots of math and where they come from is the most important part when teaching it to them. But that's not what we do currently. So.
And when you meet with our math faculty, you're going to hear, right, like our students struggle in basic algebra, right? And it's mainly because they haven't learned fractions well enough, right, when they were younger to understand the meaning behind it so that they can then build on that for the rest of algebra.
Yeah, and I mean, even fractions themselves are one of the most commonly applied things in real life. So when you see somebody who doesn't know them, you can really see a case of a place where the education system of the normal way that we teach kids hasn't worked well because I mean the teaching fractions as two numbers separated by a line does no justice to what their real world meaning is. And I mean, there are good teachers, but there are an overwhelming number of bad teachers to counter them, and so that's why. And as you grow up, it becomes harder and harder to unsolidify these concepts and misconceptions that a student has already learned and replace them with the correct values. It's like they start sticking and melting over time, and it becomes harder and harder to clean off of them. And eventually, I mean, that becomes people, if people don't get the resources and education that they would do at, say, Queensborough Community College, that's eventually going to stick with them and become a fundamental misunderstanding of math, which they will then use to build a fundamental misunderstanding of many other fields, which is why it's so difficult. It's very difficult already to cut it off at the college level. What you really have to do is cut the misconceptions off at the roots. So, I mean, I know there's not much you can do about that at a college level, but the fact that you're taking your time out to attempt to take it off for people where that misconception has already developed and grown up, I think is very admirable.
Thank you. So how far along are you at NYU?
Currently, I'm in my second semester, so right now I'm taking a bunch of courses, 5 courses this semester, so their names probably sound like black magic, but, well...
Are they all math?
No.
Okay.
One's a writing course.
Okay.
I'm taking 2 physics courses. One's called classical mechanics or dynamics. One's called fluid dynamics because it's about fluids moving, which is the dynamics part. One of them is called complex analysis, so that's practically black magic. And one is differential geometry, which is a bit more connected to the real world.
Which is your favorite?
Personally, I would say it's probably the fluid dynamic class. It's not only the most connected to the real world, because, you know, we see fluids everywhere, but I think it's also the most beautiful and the most interesting, and also the type of math that it uses is the most fun for me to work with.
How are you enjoying the writing class?
I think the writing class is pretty good. I'm pretty good at writing. It's not my best subject, obviously, but I mean,
I wouldn't say that. It might not be your favorite subject, but I still think you're good at it.
Yeah, true. I did get some pretty good grades in my last writing class, because I'm pretty decent at writing essays where I'm able to express my own opinion. But here, I think it's a very different kind of writing class where I have to not express my opinion in an essay and use supporting evidence and analyze it in a way that develops a full conclusion. But instead, I have to read a specific novel and then read another specific novel, and then I have to analyze the connections between them, which I think is a very different task. So, I mean, I haven't gotten my first grades yet, but
You think you did okay?
hopefully.
Yeah. So you had to obviously feel very frustrated, right, all through elementary school, right, before you got to there. Do you now feel like you're in the right place, or are you still surprised at the level of the students in the class with you that they're not with you?
Well, actually, I think that I found my place. The levels of courses are actually starting to make me struggle. I actually feel like I'm being challenged every time I sit down. And some of my teachers go very fast as well, so that adds to the layer of challenge when you've walked into the classroom 5 minutes late and you already have no idea what's going on. So,
So don't come late is the right?
yeah. You get persecuted.
Yeah.
And the worst thing is that it's a huge class, like 50 kids, and a pretty small classroom, which means that you're forced to sit on the floor, which never gives you a good view.
No.
Yeah, the place where I take my classes in has a whopping, the one building where I take my classes has a whopping 2 lecture halls, with the rest of them being really tiny classrooms that you would see in, a high school, which means that oftentimes when you have a class that every math major is required to take, it becomes really full, and suddenly you see people starting to sit on the floor.
Not conducive for learning.
Yeah, so that's why, I mean, you get persecuted for not coming early and sitting right in the front. And if you continue those habits, well, people will say, hey, I already sat there. I've been sitting there for the rest of the semester. What's your right to take my seat now? So you have to start the habits early.
So did they waive a bunch of prerequisites for you so that you could get into all these classes?
Nope. I've been doing the normal track all by myself, following all of the same requirements that every single other student has, and I think that's the biggest thing I pride myself on. I didn't take a shortcut because some administration member felt good about me.
Yeah.
I went through the exact same things and did the exact same things that the 21-year-old sitting with me in class right now just did.
Yeah. So I didn't mean it that you were taking a shortcut, more about that just because of your ability that you didn't need like the class that you would normally need to take before you took some of these advanced, because these sound like very advanced classes for a second semester student. That's really why I asked that question.
Well, actually, that's mostly because of the supplementary courses
that you've been taking everywhere else.
Yeah, mostly at CUNY colleges, it happens. And the thing is, actually, I once tried to take a supplementary course way above my level. So here's the general progression that you take. So first you want to take real calculus 1, then you want to take calculus 2, then you want to take real analysis, then you want to take complex analysis, then you want to take differential geometry, then you want to take topology 1, then you want to take topology 2. But I was feeling gutsy, and one of the NYU math professors who was teaching topology 2 allowed me to take it, so I tried to jump directly into graduate topology 2, which was about 4 courses or 4 semesters above my level at the time, and I understood approximately 0% of what was going on. So it goes to show you that, I mean, you're not invincible, and you still have to build your foundations.
How did that, right? Because you probably have never failed at anything, right?
I mean,
how did that feel when you were struggling and not able to do that?
I mean, it at one point felt like, I mean, this was just far above my level. I can't go into this area of math. It didn't feel fun for me anymore after taking a few weeks of the class. And eventually I debated dropping it, but I was just sitting in, not
Yeah.
actually taking any of the
Yeah.
tests or exams.
Yeah.
So I decided to finish the course,
Mm-hmm.
but it felt like I hadn't taken anything away from it.
Mm-hmm.
And at the end of the day, I felt like I was demotivated to go into the differential geometry topology path.
Yeah.
And so it drove me towards other fields
Yeah.
of mathematics, including differential equations, which is what I'm looking at right now.
But if you took topography 1, right, like you'd be okay the second time.
If I took topology 1, well, probably I'd have to take differential geometry before that, which I only started taking now.
Okay.
So,
Yeah.
and I also would probably have to take complex analysis before that,
Mm-hmm.
and then real analysis before that.
Mm-hmm.
So, as I said, it's not just one course; it's 4 courses above my level.
Yeah. No, hard. It's hard because that's the problem, right? With honors students, a lot of times they've never had to fail at anything, right? Like they've never not been successful. So when it does hit them, it's really hard to accept.
Oh yeah, I mean the honors courses over at NYU, just because of that fact, are a huge safety net. The non-honors courses are brutal; they don't curve at all. But the honors courses have a huge curving net. I mean, when I took Algebra 1, which is not the Algebra 1 you see in high school, it's more like group theory. The regular class, their average grade was totally canned. But since I took honors, the top 50% of the class all got A's and A minuses. It was only when you got to the bottom 50% when you started seeing B's and C's. I don't think the professor gave a single F. So that really makes honors a safety net, but I don't think it should be because the students still should be facing some sort of challenge. He probably came in as president at, the worst possible time in the middle of the coronavirus pandemic. But the way that you handled that when there were 800 faculty and none of them know your name, and the way that you still managed to make your presence known in a way that none of the other presidents have before, I think is something very admirable. So once again, you impressed me a lot with the work that you've done in only 5 years, and I'm hoping that for the rest of your tenure here as president, you're going to continue bringing great things to Queensborough Community College.
Thank you. And I have to say, I am very impressed with you. And you are in the school that I wanted to go to when I was 18 years old, right?
Thank you.
I would not have gotten a scholarship. So I'm thrilled that you're enjoying that experience, I hope.
Yeah, of course. And once again, I'm just going to say, back then, when you were 18, community colleges weren't as widespread. And it was harder for people who didn't have the resources and money to get an education. But now, because of people like you, people who are in your situation when you were 18, are able to get education almost anywhere. And I think that's one of the greatest things about community colleges.